TeamPulse allows you to track and analyze your work. This tutorial will show you how to track your work as well as how to analyze the work using our best practice analyzer and our built-in reporting. We will start today in the tracking section of the ribbon in My Perspective. My Perspective shows the individual team members' progress. It shows them their work in progress, work not started, and work completed. As well, I can go ahead and modify each of these works directly from here. Because of the clock icon, I can track and log my work. As well, this is coupled with our best practice analyzer. So if any best practices are being broken for work that is assigned to you, you will be notified, thus allowing you to make the necessary changes upfront while not having to wait until the very end to notice a potential problem within the project. You can also view your recent changes. This will show you all the work that has been done for the previous number of days, either by yourself or if another team member has updated the work. And you will also get a progress bar showing you the total number of work items completed, the total estimate, and the number of items that are assigned to you. You can also view other team members' work, as well view an entire team's perspective. You can also view previous and future iterations as well, and the current iteration will be highlighted by the star. This again is throughout the application, so anytime you see the iteration, you will see the star for the current one. Next to My Perspective, team members also get their own personal task board. This allows them to view all the work in a visual representation as task cards. You can interact with these task cards by dragging and dropping them. The swim lanes that you see here are customizable and will depend on your process template. If you've chosen out of the box one of the templates that we support, they will be displayed as the transition state set forth. If you customize them, then you can have your own custom swim lanes for each of these and transition states for each of these. You can view the requirement that the task is associated with. You can add a new requirement from this pull-down menu, as well even add a new task. If you click on the parent requirement here, it will open it up. So in this case, this is a bug, and it's a blocking bug indicated by the red hand. I can also double click or click on the task icon here to open up the task, update it, make any necessary changes to it, and even open up the parent story. I can do this for fellow team members. As you can see, Annie here has a task that I'm associated with, and it's grayed out though. I can still interact with this and I can even log my work. However, because this is Annie's task, the work will be logged under me and not Annie. I can apply filters to narrow down and get the desired result on screen. And finally, I can go ahead and apply different types of grouping. So the task board allows you to visually represent the progress of the iterations selected and allows you to interact with these in a more natural way just by dragging and dropping the items. Along with the task board, we also have a team storyboard, which shows you all the requirements, again in a visual representation of the overall progress for this particular iteration. The swim lanes again are part of the process template and can be customized, and the grouping allows you to view the data in different perspectives. One of the greatest parts of the assign to grouping is that I can take an item and assign it to an individual just by dragging and dropping it into their row here. I'm also allowed to add a new requirement directly from here. As well, TeamPulse comes with a team task board to view what we saw in my task board but from a team level. So I can view all the work that it's assigned to, and because I had group to assign to in the storyboard, it follows me into the task board, thus allowing me not to waste time by having to regroup and get a better sense and not do any sort of context switching. I can simply just go from one screen to the other and keep the grouping the same as well as the filters. The task board allows me to view the individual team members or the entire team by applying a grouping as none, I can view all the tasks that are currently being worked on. I'm also indicated what's in to do, in progress, and done, and if I drag these from one swim lane to another, it will update the numbers on top. Just like in my taskboard and in storyboard, I can go ahead and add a new work item or even add a new task under the parent story in this case, or parent bug I should say. TeamPulse also comes with a progress grid view. Similar to the other grids that we've looked at in other videos, this allows me to view the work in a grid view and shows me, in this case, one task out of 2 complete, and thus the icon is colored halfway. Below, we have 5 tasks and 4 complete, thus 80%, and the circle is 80% covered. I can edit columns to get the best view on screen that I would like, and in this view I'm also allowed to export this iteration progress into the formats that you see here. I can also come in here and apply different views by dragging the column headers into this area up here, and this shows me 3 stories and 1 stories that are done. I can apply additional grouping. In this case, we're looking at status plus assigned to. And to remove them, simply click on the X if I mouse over them. For a single project view, we've looked at my perspective, my task board for the individual, stories, task boards, and the progress grid. And now we'll look at the dashboard. The dashboard allows me to view the progress of the iteration selected, and I can go up to past iterations if need be. I get a status history report which demonstrates where we are in a visual way, what is done versus committed. And in this case, it looks like we might have 1 requirement that is approved. Below we have a burn down. Now the burn down is something that's been traditional with a lot of agile teams because it gives them a representation as to whether they will be early, late, on time, and allow them to make the necessary changes to ensure project success. Because ultimately we want to deliver value to what we've committed, and completing the requirements is how we will deliver value to our stakeholders. The great part about our burn downs is that they're mixed modes. I can look at it from a task estimate, or in this case a story estimate. This will tell a very different story. As you can see here, we're actually pretty high and will be probably late, not deliver a lot of value. We will have, because of something that we've added, around 136 points if we were to end today that were not ultimately completed. The mixed modes allows us to view the same data but from different perspectives, thus allowing us to make the necessary decisions to ensure that project success. Some of these fields have RSS capability. This is a great way to share the data with other team members or subscribe through your favorite RSS reader or even Outlook. In this case, we will use Internet Explorer to demonstrate what it would look like if we did the RSS feed. As you can see, it gives us the task estimate for the iteration 3. It shows us the time and the project that we're looking at. Other widgets within the dashboard are overall timeline of the project, which is valuable to know when we started, where we're going, which will be September 21st, 2012 in this case, and where are we today. You can also view the capacities for the current iterations. So we have 161 committed story points. We're on day 12 with a 14-day iteration or cycle. And below that, we have individual team member progress, where you'll be able to see what each team member is doing. You can view their overall progress in the bar, total estimate of work items, so total estimate of all the work items they have assigned and the number of work items assigned to them. And then finally, a what's new feed that's showing you the last 20 items that have been entered into TeamPulse. So this dashboard displays the work for a current single project. However, TeamPulse has the ability to look at the data if you have multiple projects and aggregate it. So for that, we will look at our cross-project tracking. We will start off by the project statuses. This is called XView, And inside of XView, I can view the overall project health and, most importantly, get the high-level KPIs to allow me to make the necessary decisions. In this case, we're looking at individual projects, and I can see blocking defects, an estimated completion date, and if I scroll over, any late items or unplanned work that's been added to the current iteration. To get a better understanding, I can go ahead and expand these views to understand what the blocking buck is, what late items we have, and what are unplanned stories that have been added during the iteration. And again, a burn down with mixed modes to let me view the data again from different perspectives, and thus allow me to make the necessary decisions to ensure that project success. XView allows us to aggregate the data into one screen, and if you're using TFS, or Team Foundation Server, and you have one project with multiple areas, TeamPulse allows you to separate those areas into individual projects and giving you this view that you see here. Even if you're using a single project, the value of these KPIs are tremendous because it allows us to view the hotspots and act upon them before waiting too far down the line to make the necessary changes where there's not much that we can do. The project status, so from a cross-project standpoint, is only part of XView. The people status will show us the individual team members' progress across multiple projects and any potential hotspots. To ensure that we don't have fires, we want to be able to prevent as many fires as possible. So we're going to single on Paul Smith, and as you can see, he's completing tasks along the way. Even on the weekend, he's got some work completed. The weekends are highlighted by blue. You can see items not started and items in progress, which has a hotspot. So in order to get a better understanding, let's go ahead and expand and see what the problem might be. So on this particular project, he has no work left, but he's got 5 items in progress. But for this project, we stated that we should have no more than 3 items in progress at all time. It doesn't stop him. It's just a best practice rule. So it just lets us know that there's potential problem here because there's too much work on hand. Each of these projects, when I mouse over here, you'll see this little gear, allows me to modify the settings. So depending on the type of project that you have. So maybe you have a long-term support project. You can have a lot of tasks on hand because we're just fixing little bits at a time. It doesn't take very long. You can go ahead and modify the settings for that project to allow more work in progress. Or specify the days that you have for unplanned work. So let's go ahead and take a look at Project 3's tracking settings. We can choose the default burn down. In this case, we're interested in task estimate. For warnings, we only care to show a warning when we're 20% from the planned completion date. So more or less than 20% show us a warning that could be early, late, or we'll never finish. And then we can set the maximum. So if it's more than 40%, again, show a warning. For the people status screens, you can display how many items somebody should have in not started as well as in progress. So for this project, we had set 3. I can go ahead and increase this to 5, well, let's say 6. And for this case, how many items can they have not started? We'll say 7. And then on the common settings, we need to understand what is unplanned work, unplanned stories. So if 2 or more days have happened from the start of the iteration, we will treat that as unplanned work. It's not something that we committed to, it was just added during the iteration. We had to commit to it at a later point. So that's important to know because unplanned work can be very chaotic to teams. It could be a big requirement causing us to either not take it on or cause us to defer other work into a later iteration. And thus we're not delivering the value that we originally had committed to. Once you're done making the changes, just click on Save Changes. This will bring us back to the people status screen that we were just at. And when I expand this, you will see that this is no longer a hotspot because we specified. If it goes over 6, then again it would raise that hotspot and covered in red. When we look at Annie, it tells a different story. We see these large spikes. So something is definitely going on, and in the past 2 days no work has been completed, and that'll be highlighted by this pink. So if we expand Annie, we need to get a better understanding as to where the problem might be. And immediately I'm spotting a couple of problems, but one that's really interesting to me. In this project, you will see that she has 4 items in progress, 1 not started. So that might not tell the full story. So maybe we need to actually dig a little bit deeper and go into my perspective for a cross-project view. As you can see here, the requirements are in progress, but the interesting part is that they're very big. And that's probably what's causing the problem. She's got huge estimates of work. So she is working, but they're being completed over the course of a couple of days. So you'll see a big spike in work done because it takes, again, a couple of days to complete it. So we might want to look into decomposing the work into small, more manageable requirements so that we don't have a potential problem. Because what would happen here, if she doesn't get to the 72-point story, then we won't deliver this huge amount of value that we have here. My perspective, from a cross-project standpoint, allows you to view different team members, and then allows you to drill down to a specific project, or if you prefer, all projects. In all projects, we can go ahead and take a different action in this case, and that allows us to add a task directly from the screen. So if you notice that there's a task missing, or you need to do an additional task that you didn't think about previously, you can go ahead and add it directly from here. Say create mocks, and you can save and add another, or just simply save. Finally, we want to be able to track time. Built into TeamPulse is a time tracking module. This allows us to, it's actually what I said, track our time. So in the timesheets, I can go ahead and enter my time. If I want to, I can go ahead and enter a note and save my changes. I can choose the type that it is, and I can even add non-billable work from here. These types are customizable, so you can go ahead and not just have billable but unbillable work. You can also do something as R&D work, which might be tracked differently. It's still work, but we want to track and bucket it in a different bucket, if you will. But more importantly, it allows us to track, to see how much time is being spent on these different items. You will do this from the time entry screen, which allows us to export the data. So you can export to CSV if you prefer, and you can go ahead and do such things as drag the column to apply the right filtering. You can select the start and end date that you wish to report on. And you can see this will show Annie's work when it's done by persons and the next individuals on our teams as well. To remove it, just click on the X. Exporting to CSV is not our only option to getting to this data. We also have a built-in API, which you can go ahead and search our forums in our support area to get back the material to learn how to work with our API. So you can go ahead and integrate this with your payroll system or any other system that you wish to. So that covers the tracking aspect of TeamPulse. The other area that we'll be discussing today is our analysis section. Built into TeamPulse is our best practice analyzer. It's primarily designed to prevent problems by ensuring that teams stay within predefined best practices. So a good example of this is the unplanned work that happens. We all know it's just something that cannot be avoided from time to time, and if that planned work is added, but we do not have an estimate associated with them, then that again can be very detrimental, right? Because we don't know how big it is. It was just added, we say we do it, but if it turns out to be a big requirement, again, it could have a big disruption within the team. Other best practices that we have are things as bugs not being in specific areas. So if you don't know what feature, if you're using areas as feature, or what area the bug belongs to, it makes it difficult to fix because you need to get a better understanding as to how the bug was created in the first place, or what's the functionality that it's causing to break. As well, other best practices are bugs that have no resolutions. So think about that for a second. You've completed a bug, but you haven't stated how to resolve it. So if this bug comes again, we'll have to waste the time to determine how it was fixed, when the answer could just be right in the resolutions in TeamPulse. To get a better understanding of each of these bugs, you can go ahead and expand to view the definition for this best practice rule. You don't have to run all of them. You can just choose to run a couple at a time, and then analyze your project. To choose them all, just click on the box. That'll highlight them all, then you can go ahead and analyze your project. And this will give you the results or the summary, which you can then export to the format you see here. And if you'd like to take the advantage to correct them, you can quite simply just click on it to go to the result, correct it, and then that will complete that analysis result, that summary for this particular best practice run that we did. From a best practices standpoint as to when should run it, because this is the question that comes up a lot for us, we always tell our product owners or team members, run it while you're grooming your backlog. While you're prioritizing the backlog is a good time to run this. As you're prioritizing, you're working with those requirements, so let's see if you can catch any of these, and then quite simply make the corrections. More importantly, this will allow that when the requirement does get committed, you're not missing any of these little infractions that could create bigger problems down the line. Built into TeamPulse is our reporting area. Inside of our reporting areas, you will find reports that are grouped into different buckets. In this case, we'll look at tracking reports, and we'll look at a classic burn down report. Now inside of here, it gives you the ability to include child iterations. However, if you go to the top level and generate a report for this, it's a good way to get a overall burn down, a project burn down. If you've created individual, or if you nested or created individual releases, for example, you had release 1, let's say, and you put iterations below that, you can choose that top level, include the child iterations, and run that for a release burn down. You can go ahead, once the report is run, and export it to the formats you see here, or simply print it. For tracking, we also offer burn downs by areas, burn downs in tasks, status histories, and progress by area in stories. So let's go ahead and run this one more time. And you will notice that because of my last report, I chose the top level, it just follows me. That way I don't have to go ahead and re-enter it. If I need to select the current, I can just click on select current. So I'll go ahead and just run this report. And this is showing me a roll-up of information for the entire project. So for the calendars area, you will see that we have, we'll say, about 125 points completed, and this is left in progress. The requirements section contains a detailed report of requirements, and I can go ahead and choose what I want to see. Maybe I don't need to know about external links or attachments, but I'm curious to know the tasks, the relationships, and acceptance criteria, as well as the persona. So I'll go ahead and run this, and I'll run it for the current iteration. This will give me a detailed report of all the different items inside of this iteration. As you can see, we have add employees roles to employee management, and this is a requirement that is done. Gives you the size of the requirement, who it's assigned to, and the priority classes that you've seen in other videos. The description, the task list, any associated personas. So a very detailed report which you can then print and bring over to a meeting or display wherever you need to. From a requirements section, there's also an average size by area. So it's important to know how big the requirements are in each area, so that when you commit, you take into consideration that a specific feature of our product or a specific area carries a larger requirement. So I'm going to go ahead and again run this from the top level. I'll go ahead and click on Generate Report. And you can see that on average, story estimates for the calendar area are really big. They're 53 points. So when taking that into effect, when working within the calendars, you might want to think about how much is added. Or if you work on multiple areas, you'll have to know that the calendar section will weigh heavier. Another report is our estimates versus actual. So this gives you a good correlation between the story estimate and the amount of time that a team is spending on the tasks. So we will choose a previous iteration, as this will only show completed requirements. And as you can see, when we have stories that are larger than 28 points, our PERT estimate for the tasks is slightly less than the average work completed. So we are underestimating larger requirements. When we look at requirements between 15 and 28 points, it's a little bit different. We are overestimating them. We're very close, but there's just a little bit of a difference there. Bug reports allow us to run bugs by area, allowing you to quickly spot which of the areas inside of TeamPulse have the most bugs, as well bugs by severity. So I'll select all severities in this case, and I'm interested maybe this time in a pie chart, and whether the triage or not. In this case, I want to see both. So I'll go ahead and run it from the top level again, because it remembers from the last report I ran, and I'll generate the report. Finally, in planning, we have a great report which is planned versus completed. So this allows you to compare work that was planned and ultimately what was delivered at the end of the iteration. So what's interesting to know here is that I can pass in different variables, such as how many days after the iteration was it changed? Do we have to re-estimate them during the iteration? Planned but not completed, so we added but didn't complete it. And things that we removed. So maybe this time I just want to run these two here. I'll choose a previous iteration, and I'll generate the report. So this will show me that we planned 160 points and delivered 160 points. So there's no delta. If there was, you would see the delta versus the delivered stories that were planned. So you would see if you were above, below, or within 10%. As well, you would see any deviation on here and any requirements that were added. So if I had chosen added, maybe we'll run them all, and we'll run it from the top level, see if we can get a better result here. In this case, we planned 392 points. We only delivered 344. We can see that we have between 10 and 25% of the estimate delta, so we're about 48 points off. This allows me to view what was added. So we added these two requirements and who they were added by. You can also view estimates by area. So I'll go ahead and run this report. So estimates by area of 160 points in calendars, 104 in user management, 215 for vacation management. And then we always want to look at velocity. That's important when we go forward to understand what our teams are doing. So we can easily gauge what teams are completing one iteration to the next, right? And then we can get a better breakdown, because we need to know the stories and bugs, right? What's the correlation between stories and bugs? So let's go ahead and run this for a previous iteration. We'll click on Generate Report again, and we'll see that the average bug estimates were 3, and the average story points were 160 for the previous velocity. And then new to TeamPulse is our estimates versus cycle time. So this gives us a good understanding between the time in days that a team is spending when an item goes to an in-progress state to done. So not between the time the requirement was added till the time it was done, because that could be very long if it's a 2-year project. We're only curious to know how long is it taking us to complete requirements from the time that it goes to an in-progress state to a done state. So we'll generate the report, and this will show us that when we have stories that are larger than 28 points, again, it's taking us approximately 7 days to complete the requirement from the time we start working on it to the time we define it as done. And a little bit less, between 15 and 28 days. And then stories that are between 2 and 5 is 2 days. And then small requirements that are 1 are 4 days. So this is something that we'll need to take a look at, right? This automatically raises a flag that says, well, when we have requirements that are estimated between 2 and 5, we seem to have a better grasp in them because it takes us less. But when we have these 1-point requirements, it's taking us actually longer to complete. So we'll need to understand and make the necessary adjustments. And finally, you can also access the time entry screen from the analysis section. So we reviewed this earlier, but again, it allows me to view the time entries, create the proper headings, and export to CSV or use our API to extract the data. So now that you've learned how to track and analyze your work, we hope that you'll be able to go to your TeamPulse instance and be able to view what we viewed today and make the necessary adjustments to ensure project success. And this concludes our tutorial on tracking and analytics.